Welcome everybody to today's creativity session, a time to relax, a time to play. Grab your beverage and unwind with me. This demonstration will be provided on the Procreate app using an iPad. However, you can follow along with any drawing tablet or just a plain and simple brush with paints. New videos come out every Tuesday and Thursday. If you have any ideas for me on what to paint next, please leave it down in the comments below. Step number 1, we're going to be creating a new canvas, 16 inches wide by 20 inches in height. Step number 2, we're going to download the template and the color palette from the description box below. And step number 3, we're going to be doing the background. So I just picked the 4th green color in the middle row to the left, and I infill the entire background with that color. Next, I take the acrylic brush from the painting section, and I take a little bit darker of a shade of green, and I just fill in the top and the bottom a darker color. Next, we're going to be blurring this together with the blur function, and I picked to about 20%. Step 4 is we're going to be working on the shoreline and the bird's tail. So I input the template on its own layer, and I add a layer on top of the template, so we don't want to be painting directly on the template, but a layer on top of the template. Next, I take a dark blue color from the bottom row on the left-hand side, and I infill the bird's tail. Then the light blue color on the bottom left, I just put a few striped points into the bird's tail. So now I'm going to work on the shoreline. Basically, I use all the colors on the top row of the palette, and I work from darkest to light. I also use different brush motions to add texture, so some splotching and some circular motions. A dotting pattern also towards the back. And then with the lighter colors, you see, I'm start to add rocks towards the forefront of the shoreline. This layer is going to be blurred, so it does not need to be perfect whatsoever. I blurred it to about, you can play with it, but about 4%. Step 5, we're going to be working on the bird itself. So I insert the template here. Again, I make it visible, and I add a layer, so layer number 4 on top of it. Again, we don't want to be painting directly on the template. I pick a gray color about the middle top of the palette, and I just blotch in where the gray parts of the bird are going to be. So along the back and the bottom of the wings. Next, I take a dark blue color, the darkest blue color on the palette, and I add a couple shadow points to the back of the wings. I take that same color and I just fill in all of the darker parts of the bird. I take a light blue and I fill in the bird's head. That was the bottom left blue. Basically just getting the base colors of the bird, and then I'm going to be using the smudge tool and we're going to smudge everything together. I then take a black color and I fill in where the eyes are, the beak, and also the legs. Next, I wanted to add a couple touches of green. My reference photos showed a little bit of a hunter's green. So with a smaller brush, I just kind of etch in a few spots wherever the gray was. And here's where I'm going to smudge everything together. And then I'm going to be removing the template. So this is what we're left with. I start by adding more detail to the beak and to the eye area. And I'm going to work my way up the bird. Next, I'm going to grab a highlight color, so a white, and I'm just going to add a little bit more detail. So highlights to the tip of the beak, and then some nostrils. And then with that same color, I very lightly kind of scribble in some fine feathers. I like doing it this way. You can use the fur brush if you really want to, very small, if that's going to save you time. But again, I am a painter, so I like to just do things the hard way, apparently. So I finished up with that white feathering, and now I picked almost a dark brown to go over wherever the gray spots or the green spots were. And you're just adding some fluff and texture to the bird. I moved on to a dark blue, the darkest blue I could find on the palette. I'm just adding a few little details. Again, we're going to be smudging out anything that looks too obnoxious or obvious. And this is the smudge tool, and I'm just feathering everything out and blending it together. So next we work on the big feathers on the back of the bird. I increased my brush size, and you can see that I'm using kind of like a wisping motion. We're going to be adding different colors and then also using the smudge tool here. So I smudge the base of the feathers, anything where it's too obvious of a brush stroke. And then I fill in a little bit at the base of those feathers with that hunter green. And I carry that just very lightly. So towards the middle, you want it to be the lightest. Towards that outside of the back, you want it to be the darkest. And then I just smudged some spots. I take a black color here and I just want to add a couple shadows. The tip of the wings are the darkest points of the bird. Next, I'll take that light blue color and I'll add some highlights. You're just accentuating those feathers on the back there. Just giving everything a quick smudge. Step number 6 is touch-ups and water ripples. So we're going to go into our layers, the bird layer and the shore layer, and we're going to duplicate them. You can duplicate them by sliding to the left and you'll see a duplicate button. And then it gives you an option to flip that copied image vertically. So we want it to be an exact mirror image of what we have. And then I go in and those copied images, I blur them. As the reflection in the water wouldn't be as crisp, you want them to be a little bit blurred. And you can play around with whatever you think looks the best. Next, I'm going to go into the layers. I'm going to pick the background layer or the water layer. I'm going to go into brushes and I'm going to pick the dry brush from the painting section. I'm going to pick a white color and I'm going to very lightly put some strokes across where the water would be. Use a fairly big brush size here. You don't want anything to be too obvious. If something is a little too obnoxious, we can either erase it or we can use the smudge tool, which I'm doing now. I'm just smudging out a few points. This was just a very basic tutorial. If you do have any advice for me on how I can better my videos, please leave it down below in the comments. I'm very interested to hear. Other than that, have a wonderful day.